Welcome to a perfect game. Technical play is needed for success, and if you play your cards right, you too can play a perfect game. Now, if you want to improve at the game, get your first invite or top a premier event, hitting that subscribe button is the first step. After topping YCS Niagara, I wanted to bring you guys a video on how to hand trap Tearlaments. Tearlaments is a fusion deck out of Power of the Elements, and now it's very strong in the current format with the addition of the punk cards, with the addition of the danger cards, and even we've seen a lot of additions of the sprite cards come out of YCS Niagara. I'm going to show you guys how to hand trap the Tearlament engine specifically, and you can kind of tailor your hand traps like depending on if they're playing maybe a different variant. I can go into a bit of detail on that as well, but starting with danger tier and pure Tearlaments in general, I want to start with the effect negation hand traps, Imperm, Veiler, as well as Ghost Mourner, something that we've seen in a few topping lists at YCS Niagara. Those hand traps are really strong into Tearlaments because they're able to stop monsters that have multiple effects. Normally, when we have those hand traps in our hand, the first instinct is to Veiler or Imperm a Reinhardt. However, a lot of the times that may not be the appropriate situation. If your opponent is low on resources, it definitely makes sense to Veiler or Imperm the Reinhardt. However, at the start of the turn, especially if they're going second, it's very difficult to determine what cards they have in hand, of course. So I tend to hold my Veiler, my Imperm, or any type of effect negation for the Kit Kalos. That's normally the safest play, and it stops that second effect as well. So a lot of times I will not be hitting the normal summon. Now if the normal summon is Zeyamin, at that point I will hit it because Zeyamin it just provides too much free advantage for my opponent. So I think the key thing there is to go for hitting the Kit Kalos over the Reinhardt more times than not. Now another differentiator between the hand traps, I like to sometimes when I draw these hand traps in multiples, I like to hold them for my turn, right? So and what that allows me to do is to solve some of the issues that the sprite deck has in playing through boards. Being able to stop auto lose cards like Snow with a Ghost Mourner, or being able to interact with the Elf or a Bomber Dragon, or just something that's very disruptive on my turn. That's another potential strategy that you can try to utilize against your opponent, because a lot of the times, even if you hit the Kit Kalos, maybe they hard you the Select, maybe they don't really need it, maybe your hand loses to a Snow. It really just depends. If your hand has multiple sprite names and no real extenders, like a pot or a starter, then a lot of the times it's just safest to hold for the Kit Kalos because you would lose to the Kalita Heart. The next hand trap that I'm going to talk about is Bell and Diddy Crow. Similar with the effect Veiler idea, a lot of the times hitting the first tier name that is sent off of a Reinhardt or even sent off of a Shirin is not always the optimal play, because they may have another form of triggering that tier name and being able to pop off that way. Normally, I would like to use my Crows and my Bells, second tier name and up, or against a Snow or an Eevee, Epidemic Virus type of card. That's also very well to do, because you're able to get those cards out of rotation permanently, even forcing out a Snow on your turn. If you play cards like Gamma, is very impactful there. So the biggest thing to take away from that is being smart with your Crow and your Bell, and not just hitting the first tier name that you see. Gamma specifically is a hand trap that's not crazy into Tearlament. It has some very good applications, because if you can hold it for your turn and utilize it well, there's some instances that it is very strong, like Nibiru with multiples, right? So if you draw like an Imperm, or if you draw like a Gamma, you can go main phase and you'll trigger the Elf that they have if you top deck the Gamma, and then when they chain Elf, you can Gamma the Elf effect, and then that will give you extenders to be able to push through. Because the main problem that I had realized with Sprite was it didn't have a lot of push plays past the normal where Tearlaments just had so many pesky disruptions, right? The biggest thing with Gamma, you don't really want to Gamma the first tier name. You might consider gamming the second tier name, but the biggest things to Gamma against Tearlaments would be if you're able to Gamma that elf. A lot of times they're trying to go for elf. They're trying to set up some of maybe the gigantic stuff. Maybe they're trying to hit you with the bomber or the IP play, or even the Griffin. Like, so Griffin elf are really good choke points to be able to Gamma. And if you have Gamma Crow, a lot of times you can hold it for your turn depending on what routes they take. One of the biggest things that I want you guys to take away from this and how to hand trap tiers, when they commit to a route, that's when you begin to punish them. And one of the most punishing hand traps against tier is Nibiru the Primal Being, being able to tribute all of their monsters. Some players I did see at Niagara were moving to playing Bow Goddess. Some players are very sly in how they choose the combo, making sure that they get to Kalita Heart before the Curious, or having Curious there, and Curious is always a threat to add back a potential power card that was milled. Obviously the Kalita Heart being able to come back and still work with the Sulik, and maybe potentially still send the third and final name. But a lot of the times, if you can nib them before they get to Curious, or you can nib them before they get to Kalito, or even at the end of the combo, and you can really punish them for getting very greedy and going for the spell canceller or the Griffin play, that can really be strong. The thing with Tearlaments is they can't always play around nib. The more passive they choose to create their board, it really just makes it like Sulik or bust. So if you have like a Cosmic or anything out the Sulik, you have a high chance of winning that game. So it's a deck that definitely looks to go all in more times than not, and you can take advantage of that. The last hand trap is a hand trap that a lot of people moved away from, but I chose to play 3 of for the YCS, was Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Now, Ash Blossom is not the most insane hand trap. It will always be the most generic hand trap. I chose to play it since I expected a few runics, and it was just a side out option against tier. I played against 6 Tearlaments and I lost to 2, and then I played 4 mirrors, sprite mirrors. I beat them all. Ash was pretty good in the tier matchup specifically. A lot of the times, you definitely can Ash Kalito Heart, Grave Effect. So a lot of times holding that Ash for your turn, if you top deck it, it's still alive, because that turns Sulik from an imperm and a spin to just be an imperm, and Sprite can definitely combo through that, as well as depending on if they link it off with Garura. Not all players were doing that, but some were, like making Curious with Garura. You can Ash the Curious. You can Ash Hafenus a lot of times. Like, you commit to a swap frog play, you commit to normal summon. Like, Hafenus can be scary at times. Being able to Ash Hafenus is pretty good. Being able to you don't tend to Ash the Kick Hollows just because of the second effect, so definitely look to Ash maybe things like the Field Spell or something that might hurt a little more, and just look to side that card out game 2 and 3 for the most part. But I did like it as a tech choice against runics. To the Tearlament matchup, it was still decent. And I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. I hope you guys got some great insight on how to hand trap Tearlaments, and comment down below any questions or about my matchups.
Stand your ground.